This video is brought to you by BetUS. More on them later in the video. But guys, quarterback's the most important position on an NFL roster. Your team's success both in the regular and the postseason lay on the shoulders of your signal caller. The question is, who are the best signal callers in the NFL? I'm glad you asked, because I'm going to be ranking 45 quarterbacks in today's video, and I split everything up into tiers just to make it a little bit easier, also to give you good reason to comment when I throw your quarterback on a tier you disagree with, but that's okay. We're all here for football discourse. We're just football fans trying to rationalize our football opinions, but let's go ahead and go over some of the tiers. The tiers will go as such. Here at the bottom, I have your high-end backups, guys that you don't mind starting a few games if they really have to, essentially your spot starters. Next, I have interesting youth options. They can be good in a variety of ways, but they have to be young, and I'm talking like only a few years into the league. And then above that, I have replacement level starters. They can be bridge quarterbacks. It can be quarterbacks playing well below what they're currently being paid. So essentially, it's these guys that aren't good long-term options for your squad. And then I have a tier that says postseason success, ? So they're good starting quarterbacks who are at least in the intermediate plans for your franchise, who have yet to prove it in the playoffs. It's going to be a wide range of different players in this tier, so buckle in. It's going to be a wild ride. After that, I have your proven winners tier, guys who just win, but they look really, really good when winning. Above that is an elite potential tier, essentially players who have one foot in that elite tier, but for one reason or another, I'm just not all in on quite yet. Above that is your elite tier, the best of the best. And then Patrick Mahomes has his own tier because of course he does. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He's not even 29 years old yet. He's that good. He deserves it. Before we continue with today's video, Gojo wants me to tell you about BetUS. Use the link in the description or the pinned comment to take advantage of an insane 125% sign-in bonus, and that's up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. It's nuts, and we're talking about quarterbacks today. So let's take a look at some of these quarterback props, because there's one I really like, and it's Dak Prescott over 29.5 touchdowns. This dude has hit that total 3 of the last 5 seasons. As a matter of fact, one of the seasons he didn't hit it in was because he was hurt, but he was in fact on pace to go over that total. So essentially that's 4 of the last 5 seasons. And thanks to BetUS, I can put a fat figure on that prop. So please take advantage of that offer today by using the link in the description or the pinned comment. And as always, my friends, bet responsibly and bet within your means. Let's go ahead and get started with this bottom tier high-end backups. I have Tyler Huntley and Jameis Winston rounding out my list. Neither really saw action last season, but they're both viewed as relatively solid backup options. Ahead of them, I have a couple of former first-round picks in Mac Jones and Kenny Pickett. They have a lot of in-game experience, so you're probably not hurt if they have to start a game here or there. And then ahead of them, I got some old heads. I got Tyrod Taylor, Joe Flacco, and Jimmy G. Jimmy G was a starter last year at the beginning of the year for the Raiders. It didn't look great. It didn't look good. But I got to imagine in a backup situation, you probably feel a bit better about Jimmy G. But then Tyrod and Joe Flacco both played wonderful football last season. Shoot, Joe Flacco was comeback player of the year. He helped lead the Browns to the playoffs. You got to wonder how many years does he truly have left in him. But those guys are viewed as relatively fine backup options. Ahead of them, I have Gardner Minshew and Sam Darnold. These are 2 players who find themselves in starting positions heading into 2024. Darnold for the Vikings, Minshew for the Raiders, and they're kind of hoping to show that they can still be starters in this league, though I look at them and view them as really, really good backup options. And then Jacoby Brissett, I have at the top of this list because he honestly looked the best of anyone on here. I think he only started like 2 or 3 games, but he looked pretty darn good when he had to fill in for Sam Howell. However, guys, there is one more player I got to put on this list. This might piss Giants fans off, so don't hate me, but I'm going to throw Daniel Jones at the top of this list. Listen, I've just never been a Danny Dimes truther, and I know he was banged up last season, but even when he was coming off you would consider a very good 2022 season where he helped lead the Giants to the playoffs, he wasn't that good. Just look at what I had to say going into the 2023 season about Danny Dimes. Truthfully, I wasn't a Danny Dimes believer. I wasn't, and I'm still kinda not. I made the reference to, is he more than a Derek Carr? I don't know if he's going to be good enough to get this team over the hump. I mean, just looking like statistically at him analytically last year, okay, the adjusted completion percentage really good, 80%. But like this dude was working underneath. You got to pull back to that average depth of target at 6.5, one of the lowest in the leagues. When it came to big time throws, only 8 for the whole season, 21 turnover worthy plays. So it wasn't always ideal. It really wasn't. I mean, we could go take a look at the depth of target. Actually, let's take a look at the concepts. Because again, this was a team heavily used play action, did quite a bit on screens. Actually, man, Daniel Jones was pretty solid on them screen plays, but more importantly, the depth. This was a team that didn't, or I don't want to say didn't attack downfield. Daniel Jones didn't necessarily attack downfield. Only 26 attempts all last season, regular season and playoffs included. Only 26 attempts downfield. And really, when he was throwing it from anything further than 10 yards, it was iffy at best. On those throws, he had 2 tutties, 5 interceptions, 10 turnover-worthy plays. That's where he got careless. He wasn't seeing guys maybe over the top or underneath. That'll include the high-end backups tier. Let's move to this interesting youth options where I'm going to start off with Bo Nix. He's going to be the bottom of this tier. He's a first-round pick. I actually really liked him coming out of the draft. I think he's a really good fit for Sean Payton's offense. Currently, though, listed 3rd on the depth chart. That'll be interesting to see how long that may or may not last. Next, I'm also going to put Aiden O'Connell. There's a good chance he ends up being the starter to begin the year for the Raiders, or he ends up being the starter at some point in the season for the Raiders. Like, the guy's a gunslinger. I don't think there's like a ton of upside with him. I think he probably ends up being more of a replacement level starter or high-end backup in the league. But you gotta admit, the guy was slinging. He was slinging last season. After that, I have like Michael Penix Jr. I have JJ McCarthy, players that were first rounders this past season. I think both of them went in the top 10. Well, Penix 8, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, the Vikings moved up to 10 to get McCarthy. But both are viewed as, well, for different reasons. Both are viewed as long-term options, just not immediate starters. JJ McCarthy, still a lot to develop in his game. Michael Penix Jr., he's going to be hanging back while Kirk Cousins takes the Falcons on a ride. And then ahead of those players, I'm going to put Sam Howell. I still believe in Sam Howell. I think he's in a good situation with the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think he's going to unseat Geno Smith, but there is some point maybe he comes into the season. I thought last year, I know for as much good, there was a lot of bad. I believe when it came to his big time throws, he had 30. His turnover worthy plays, he had 31. He was someone that stumbled into a lot of sacks. He didn't really do his Granted, his offensive line wasn't that good last year, but he also wasn't doing his offensive line many favors. But I think there's still something there. He was actually my favorite quarterback in that 2022 draft. So I'm still holding out a little bit of hope. There's a good chance though he ends up in this high-end backup tier. Right above Sam Howell, I got Justin Fields. He's currently going to be battling out with Russell Wilson, and I still hold out hope. He is very athletically gifted, and I think he's got a really good arm. He's just got to really work on, well, his processing and whatnot. I think he's a really good fit for Arthur Smith's offense, but at this juncture, he's still largely an interesting youth prospect rather than someone that might belong in my surprise tier, high upside, not proven. Which we'll talk about that tier when we get there. Haha, surprise tier. Didn't even mention it at the beginning. Haha. What more surprises do I have in this video? I guess you're going to have to find out. The last player I'm going to put in this interesting youth tier is, in fact, Bryce Young. I still believe he was my top quarterback in the 2023 NFL draft. Don't worry, guys. CJ Stroud, he was my third overall prospect. Let's not act like I hate CJ Stroud. Matter of fact, you're going to find out I really like CJ Stroud. But Bryce Young, I still think the talent is there. For as bad as it was in Carolina last year, he did show some promise. And now with Canals there, the quarterback whisperer himself, I think there's a good chance that he figures it out somewhat this season. Let's not act like the Panthers have a ton of talent on the roster. No, they're still rebuilding. And I still am holding out hope for Bryce Young. Now let's go to this replacement level starters tier, because I'm sure there's going to be some disagreement here. But I'm going to begin this tier with Mr. Unlimited. Listen, he's playing all right. He played fairly well down the stretch for the Broncos last season. But let's not kid ourselves. This isn't Russ of like 2020 and 2021. He's not the same guy. He's not entirely washed, but I think he's a safe option at a quarterback, but he's no longer can be viewed as a long-term starter, especially at his age, but also at his current level of play. So he's going to be at the bottom of this tier. Right ahead of him, I'm going to have Mr. Plain Jane himself, Derek Carr. He is the most just mediocre bridge option. He can play well. He can play terribly. There's just so many peaks and valleys with Derek Carr's play that he should be viewed as a long-term option, as a franchise quarterback for most teams. He's really someone who can maybe hold your team over while you figure that out. And then ahead of him, I'm going to put Geno Smith. A lot of what this is age, but Geno Smith's still playing good football. He's figured it out as of the last couple of years. Took like a decade, but he's a solid starter in the NFL. He shouldn't be viewed as the long-term answer, but he's certainly a hell of a good quarterback and a guy that, quite frankly, can't lead a team to the postseason. I don't think he's going to lead them deep into a postseason run, but I think he could get a team to the playoffs. And then I only have one other player in this tier, and it's going to be Deshaun Watson. And ultimately, it's just the guy hasn't played up to the contract, the ludicrous contract, the fully guaranteed contract. So I know he was suspended for what, like 3/4 of his first season in Cleveland. But we just haven't seen anything really encouraging with him. We haven't seen that same upside that we saw in Houston. Maybe he turns it around this year now with Ken Dorsey in there, but I have my doubts. It's still a very bad contract as it stands right now. But let's get to that surprise tier. Your high upside, but unproven, not proven. These are essentially your first round picks, guys who've played a very small sample size of football, but their tools are just ludicrous. They're nutty. And we're going to begin this with Jaden Daniels, the number 2 overall pick in this past draft for the Washington Commanders. Very athletically gifted. He throws a pretty deep ball, not necessarily the strongest arm, but someone who he throws with good touchdown field. And it's going to be really fun to see him there for the Commanders and Cliff Kingsbury's offense. It ought to be a good time, so strap up, buckle in. That's probably a more appropriate way. Buckle in, strap up. Golly. PG, buddy, PG. Ahead of him, I'm going to have Will Levis. I thought he showed a lot of promise last year. He's someone who came from Liam Cohen, who, if you're not familiar with, he was the OC at Kentucky. Now he's the OC for the Buccaneers. He did have NFL experience prior to his run with the Wildcats, where he was the OC for the Rams prior to that. So Will Levis, coming from that system, was already a very pro-ready quarterback in terms of how to read, whether it's the defense, how to just knowing the timing of NFL route concepts. Like, he wasn't working in a very simplistic offense, necessarily an RPO heavy offense and whatnot. So he was kind of groomed and ready, but the dude comes with a ridiculously strong arm and very good athletic ability. And I still lay awake some nights thinking of him and the Titans beating my Dolphins in Miami. Cold sweats. Ahead of him, I'm going to put Drake May. I don't know. Either you loved or you hated Drake May during this last draft process. I had him as my quarterback too. I think he's really young. He does need a little bit of development, but he's got an NFL arm. He is a very plus athlete, so he definitely deserves to be in this tier. And then I think the next two players are kind of in a league of their own in terms of the tools, what they bring to the table. First one's going to be Anthony Richardson. We got a small taste of what he could do last year before the shoulder injury, I believe. He had the concussion, and I think the next one was the shoulder injury. But I'm very excited to see what he's going to do in a Shane Steichen offense. And then, of course, I got your first overall pick, Caleb Williams, here for the Chicago Bears. He was a hell of a good quarterback prospect. Honestly, a lot of the gripes people had with him was just kind of cosmetically, whether it was crying in his mom's arms or painted fingernails. Those were kind of the big gripes with him. I get it. Some of his play last year was a very inconsistent. He could be a big play hunter, but a lot of it was warranted given how bad the defense was for USC last season. But I liked him. I loved him. He was my number one overall prospect. Yeah, I imagine so, because then Marvin Harrison would have been too. Because, again, guys, quarterback, it's the most valuable position on an NFL roster. Of course, you're going to outweigh quarterback over wide receiver. Now, let's talk about this postseason success tier, because I said earlier in the video, it's going to be a big variety of different guys here. You're going to get guys with maybe a playoff win here or there, or players maybe that have been really good, but they just haven't shown it in the playoffs yet. But I guess the best way to kind of describe this tier is to kind of go one by one through everyone that I have listed in here, as Kirk Cousins is going to be the first player in this tier. Someone who just doesn't have a ton of postseason success. Last year, he played really well for the Vikings. Unfortunately, the injury just kind of like ruined what could have been, honestly, an MVP season. Kirk Cousins was that good at the beginning of last season. Now he's with the Falcons. I think it's going to be fun, but I think the Falcons are going to be a winning team. I just don't know how much postseason success he's truly going to have. Ahead of him, I have Baker Mayfield, who was someone who won a postseason game last season against the Philadelphia Eagles. Granted, the Eagles were kind of trending the wrong way heading into the playoffs, but I just want to see more from Baker. Like, last season was kind of a make or break year. Was he going to be a bridge option, or was he going to be someone that the Bucs had to pay? And he ended up being someone the Bucs had to pay. He played relatively well. and got them to the playoffs. Now, is he someone that I think you could kind of put the game on his shoulders? No, I don't think he's that type of player, but he is definitely someone that I think could lead his team to the playoffs. Question is, how deep can he take his team into the playoffs? Ahead of Baker Mayfield, I have Kyler Murray. This could be a hot take. I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's kind of a hot take of where I have him on this list. But guys, he's a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the NFL. But it's injury. Injuries have really screwed Kyler Murray the last few seasons. Like, I think dating back to 2020. Can he stay healthy? He is one of the smallest quarterbacks in the NFL, smallest starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Can he stay healthy is kind of the big question, and that's why he's in this tier, and I think that's fair. But there's no denying, like, he's a hell of a good quarterback, deserves to be higher. I just want to see that this season. I want to see him be healthy. Above Kyler Murray, I'm gonna go ahead and list my last two quarterbacks in this tier. As one's going to be my boy Tua Tagovailoa, baby. Fins up. I'm a Dolphins fan, if you didn't know that. Welcome, Dolphins fan, giving his opinion out here. And then ahead of Tua is going to be Trevor Lawrence. Two players that were taken very high in their respective drafts. Tua going at pick 5 or 6. I can't remember. It's been so long now. And then obviously Trevor Lawrence being the first overall pick. And two guys that got paid this offseason. Tua hasn't won a game in the playoffs this year. Like, dude went off. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, Tua had a wonderful year this past season. Threw for over 4,600 yards. He had 29 touchdowns, 35 big-time throws. He had 22 turnover-worthy plays. So a little high, but that's not like... Okay, it's a little high. But that game in Kansas City, it was just so bad. Can he win in the cold? Fun fact, the playoffs, they're typically cold. And unless you're playing in a dome, like, can he win in the postseason? I hope so. As a Dolphins fan, I really hope so. But like, my fear with him is he's gonna end up like Kirk Cousins, who is gonna be this regular season merchant who looks really good. He could lead his team to a good quality number of wins. But then they get to the postseason and it's like, where you at? Where you at? I think, honestly, Kirk Cousins is kind of the floor with Tua, and I'll talk a little bit about his ceiling when I get to that player. Trevor Lawrence, he does have a playoff win. That was against the Chargers, and it was just that monumental breakdown. And to be fair, with Trevor Lawrence last season, he was pretty banged up. I think that there's no denying the talent. He has top 10 talent. I largely believe in the talent, but I figured the easiest way to kind of do a quarterback rankings was to break it up into tiers that made sense, rather than being like, oh, I think this guy's better than this guy or this guy's better than this guy, because there is a little bit of that in this list. But as we get higher, you'll kind of see that it's like, okay, I see where you're coming from with that. But yeah, like, I believe in him. Let's see it this season. Last year was a bit of a disaster for a multitude of reasons. You can check out my Jaguars deep dive. I think I do a good job of kind of talking about what went wrong last season, that it wasn't just, the play, but the play of Trevor Lawrence, because honestly, it really wasn't. I thought Trevor Lawrence played really well, but there were a lot of things out of his hands that kind of led to, let's call it what it was, like the just downfall during that last stretch. This was a team that started 8-3. And then they finished the year like, 1-6 or something. So, no, I think it was 1-5. Regardless, it was bad. It was bad by the end of the season. But these are guys that I want to see have maybe some postseason success before I move them up any higher on this list. Now, let's get to these fringe top 10 players, guys, that I had on the outside looking in when it came to the top 10. And you're getting a few different strokes for different folks with these players, as I'm going to start it off with Jared Goff, surprisingly. Notable Jared Goff hater, apparently, which I kind of was. I thought the Lions I think it was a little like a year and a half ago, I was saying the Lions shouldn't pay Jared Goff long term. I don't think he's a long term option. I think you might end up with a guy that can get the Lions to the playoffs, but can he get them over that hump and have a deep run in the playoffs? Egg on my face. Look what happened last season. Essentially, should have gone to the Super Bowl if not for a total meltdown in the second half against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. But I think he has proven, like, okay, he is a quality quarterback for this squad that could definitely lead them to the promised land. But he does require some talent around him. That's kind of why, like, he just didn't fit in that postseason success tier just because of this past off season. And I don't quite think he's a top 10 quarterback, but he's kind of in that 10 to 12, 10 to 14 range. He's definitely a top half of the league starter. And I mean, I guess you have to argue he's a top 12 quarterback in this league. And then ahead of him, I'm going to have Jordan Love. Just for the fact that we only saw 1 year of it. And I mean, it was hella good. It was hella good. 34 big time throws, 32 touchdowns, threw for over 4,100 yards. Let's just rinse and repeat and get a little bit more of a sample size with him before I just chuck him into the top 10. And honestly, the same is true with CJ Stroud, which, I mean, you could really go either way. You could put Love ahead of Stroud or Stroud ahead of Love. I think it works, honestly, both ways. To me, they're in this fringe top 10 tier. They're coming off really good seasons where CJ Stroud was Rookie of the Year. My opinion, it should have been Puka Nacua. It is what it is. That's neither here or there. We're talking about best quarterbacks in the league, not who should have been Offensive Rookie of the Year last season. But Stroud had a wonderful year. A big reason for the turnaround there in Houston and why it was so quickly and just how efficient he was right off the bat. Like, DeMeco Ryans already in year one just turning around this Houston team. Him and Bobby Slowick have done a wonderful job. So those are my fringe top 10 players. Let's go ahead and get to the top 10 as proven winners. Aaron Rodgers was like the toughest player to put on this list. And if you want me to be honest, I kind of hate him at this position. I feel like he probably should be here. I feel like he should be somewhere here. But he does crack my top 10 just knowing what he has been. Like last year, he ended up hurting the Achilles, missed the whole season. But like you look at the last couple of years with Green Bay, like I know that last year in Green Bay was very like it was fine. They almost made the playoffs. But the year before that, he was like an MVP quarterback. So I'm kind of curious if there's still some of that magic left in him. And we'll find out this season. Worst case scenario, I just drop him further down the list. So he's going to be put in here. He's going to be put here for now. He'll be put here for now. I think that might be the hottest take in this video. I don't know. Stay tuned. Maybe there's more. Maybe there's more. Ahead of him, I'm going to have a couple of young guns who lost to Mahomes in the Super Bowl in Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy. Stinking Hurts has kind of been a touchdown machine because of the tush push, right? They'd get to first and goal, second and goal, they're at the one, and then they pushy the tushy in for a touchdown. So his rushing touchdowns were a bit inflated. But like, he's become a quality quarterback, man. 75% adjusted completion percentage. The big time throws are pretty solid at 28, which, fun fact, Brock Purdy, he had 27 last year. The only real difference was Jalen Hurts had less turnover-worthy plays, but not by much. And, I mean, both are in very good offenses, where it kind of begs the question, okay, is it the offense or is it the quarterback? Can you just throw any quarterback into this offense and it'll be A-okay? I don't think that's the case. We've seen Gardner Minshew having to step in for Jalen Hurts, and it was kind of whatever. We've seen Sam Darnold step in for Brock Purdy, and it was kind of whatever. I think these are two really good quarterbacks who have shown that they can but they can take their team to the Super Bowl. They just get stuck having to face freaking Patrick Mahomes. I give the nod to Brock Purdy because he took Patrick Mahomes to overtime. Not really. I go into it. I just did my Niners deep dive video for 2024 a couple of days ago, and I really go into where I'm pretty sold on Brock Purdy. At this point, there's a good case for him to be a good case to be made that he is the best quarterback in the NFC. I say that, and the two guys I have ahead of him are NFC quarterbacks, but Brock Purdy, I think, deserves to be in the top 10 at this point. I get it. He's got a bit of a noodle for an arm. It is your like average quarterback arm strength, but the confidence that Kyle Shanahan puts in him to run that offense, because let's not act like Brock Purdy's not doing anything. The Niners typically under other quarterbacks were very much more RPO heavy than they have been under Brock Purdy. Play action, this team was middle of the pack. Typically, when you have a rush attack like the Niners do, you're probably going to be in the top 5, at least the top 10 when it comes to play action. They were middle of the pack. Kyle Shanahan was like, hey, if we're going to throw, hey, you go out there. I trust Brock Purdy to go out there and make the right reads and the right decisions. Like, Brock Purdy does a good job of putting the ball where his receiver can make a play after the catch. So, like, yeah, he deserves to be here. But I think both him and Hurts deserves to be here. And then ahead of him, I got a couple of older heads in Matthew Stafford and Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott might be, you might look at this and be like, isn't the joke with Dak Prescott, he doesn't win in the playoffs? He has won in the playoffs. Let's not pretend like he doesn't have playoff wins under his belt. Yeah, I know he at least has one in the last 2 years. But he's so good during the regular season, and like, honestly, that team should have had a better playoff run last year. I talk about it in my Dallas deep dive. They literally played as a team their worst game of the season against the Green Bay Packers in the wild card last year, or I guess earlier this year. Dak's hella good. When you look at big time throws, he was first in the NFL. When it comes to turnover worthy plays, he was actually among the least. Like, him and Matthew Stafford had probably the lowest turnover worthy play rate of any quarterback. They're just good, solid quarterbacks. And I mean, I guess Dak gets the nod here because he's got a bit more of that mobility to him. Matthew Stafford, he ain't really running no more. Let's be honest. That's just not him. But he could still sling the football. He's hella good at that. And I think these are two guys that, with the talent around them, can make some a deep postseason run. I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think this could be the ceiling with Tua, like a Dak Prescott. I truly do believe that. And if that's the case, I hope Tua gets more playoff wins, but I guess we'll see. But that's my proven winners tier. These are guys that win a lot in the regular season. I know. Aaron Rodgers hasn't been since that MVP year, but I believe in it still a little bit. I don't know. Maybe at the end of the year, he just drops. Maybe he drops into this replacement level starter or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. Let's go ahead and move to elite potential. I mentioned earlier when I was going over my tiers, I have an elite tier and then I have elite potential. And this was a tier that I made for one player and one player only. A guy that he has the arm. He has a special arm. I'm just not fully sold on him as an elite player quite yet. Some of that is stuff that's been out of his hands, whether it's been Brandon Staley and just a terribly coached defense, whether it's been injury, not just to him, but to the players around him. But I think we all know who I'm talking about at this point, and it's Justin Herbert. I know just recently he got banged up. I think they said he should be ready by the beginning of the season or by the season opener, but at some point, like we've seen the high points of Justin Herbert, and it's like phenomenal. It's just, I don't know if he's really gotten over that hump yet, and hopefully that can be the case under Jim Harbaugh. We'll see. Jury's still out, but I mean, I guess you can word it as he's so good I had to make a tier just for him, just because I'm not sold on him being an elite quarterback. But yeah, here he is in elite potential. He could end up in this elite tier by the end of the season. But let's talk about guys that are the best of the best, but aren't Mahomes. And I feel like I'm going to start with Joe Burrow. Joe Shiesty. Listen, I know he was banged up last year, and people forget just how good he is, but he is one of the most, if not the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. He is so precise. His precision is just so good. He's always just a threat. And I think people just forgot about that because he was banged up last season. We'll see this year, does he stay in this tier? But I still believe, as Joe Hendry would say. Ahead of Joe Burrow, I got his division rival, Ravens, and Lamar Jackson, your reigning MVP winner, a 2-time MVP winner. Listen, guys, Lamar was hella good. I know the big time throws necessarily weren't there. His rate was probably on par with guys like Justin Herbert and, I mean, in all honesty, Patrick Mahomes too, but like Lamar's just a threat, someone you have to game plan for. Like, he's so gifted athletically. And the funny thing about that last season was they weren't like under Todd Monken, which I'll talk about. Their deep dives actually should be out maybe next week. But I'll talk about how like Monken was like, hey, Lamar, go throw the freaking football. And he was like, yes, sir. And he did a good job of it, man. Like last season, only 7 interceptions. Admittedly, he got lucky on a little bit because he had 15 turnover-worthy plays, but that 15 number is still hella low. And like as a rushing threat, like he was still pretty like hella good. Like he had 821 yards and 11 tutties. So like the dude is just a tough player to game plan for. That Ravens offense is always tough to game plan for just because of, well, who the hell is going to run the football? Do we got to worry about Zay Flowers on a jet sweep? Is it Keaton Mitchell? Get healthy soon. That's just going to hit that home run shot. Even Justice Hill has been like can be scary at points in that offense. Now they add Derrick Henry as just this monstrous bruiser. They basically took the Gus Bus and put him on steroids in Derrick Henry. So like Lamar's just helped this offense just to have so many scary threats on the ground that he's able to take advantage of you through the air. And now Monken's giving him those chances. And then the last player on this list, my number 2 quarterback in the NFL, is in fact Josh Allen. Some people will be like, oh, he's so overrated. Oh, Josh Allen, oh, he's not even that good. He had 18 interceptions last year. That's so much. He was like second in the NFL. And I'm like, yeah, he had a lot of turnover-worthy plays, but you live with it just because of the type of threat he is. Like in terms of size and athleticism, he's an alien. He's a physical specimen. He's someone who could literally do it on his own. He is him in that regard. Like this man would have been to a few more, to at least a Super Bowl or 2, if not for Patrick Mahomes. His ability to create big time, not even just big time throws, but big time plays might be like second to none in the NFL. And that's why you could kind of live with the turnovers and the turnover-worthy plays. Like last season, 37 big-time throws. His big-time throw rate was tied for first in the NFL. With who? Like I guess like Matthew Stafford was on par for that. Oh man, Matthew Stafford, dude. You go get it, bruh. You go get it. Matthew Stafford still playing good football, but you gotta imagine maybe the arm falls off the socket at some point, because how old are you, Matthew Stafford? Like going on 37, right? Yeah, he's going on 37, so I can't imagine he's gonna have like, I can't imagine he's gonna get to 40, but hey, that's within the cards. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is above 40. Tom Brady played till he was 45, but I feel like those are kind of exceptions to the rule. But if anyone can do it, it's probably Stafford. But again, Josh Allen, the dude's just special. 15 rushing touchdowns last season. He can literally do it on his own. Like he's a freaky talent. If you don't think he's elite, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. If I'm going to be honest, you could have these guys ranked in whatever way, but Mahomes is always on top. But you could have Lamar, Josh, Joe ranked in which way. You might even sprinkle a little Justin Herbert there. But I think this is a relatively good list. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you want to check out some of my deep dive videos, I'll leave those right here. I'm also doing my summer scouting for the 2025 NFL draft class. So check out that right there. Again, a special thanks to BetUS for sponsoring the video. Go ahead, check out their offer. I got the link in the description and it's the pinned comment. But as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.